live.
Thank you.
You guys can take it there. I'm gonna leave one here for her.
Recording. It was extra. Ouch.
And I turn the record on, Becky.
Okay. While I finish my sucker.
Is Lowell coming back?
Yeah,
Okay, give me time.
I think he's out back.
Oh, is he?
He said he wanted to walk across the street. I don't know where.
Yeah, he was walking over towards Wraps.
Penny Marshall from Laverne and Shirley died.
What?
75 years old.
I used to watch that show all the time.
Me too. I didn't realize she was that old, but she shouldn't be dying at 75 anyway.
She passed away in her Hollywood Hills, California home on Monday due to complications from diabetes.
Oh.
That's one disease you don't mess with.
Yeah. My dad has it really bad.
My brother has it. My mom had it. My grandfather had it.
Yeah. He got
That's
a couple of his toes removed.
My dad has it.
And my grandpa.
And it all kind of stemmed from walking in his bedroom and he stubbed his toe against his bed. And it never healed right. And then got infected real bad.
We can have it out here, so it's nice weather. It's not that nice out there.
You want to move the meeting outside?
Yeah, we could. All right, so
I placed an agenda. We're on record. I placed the agenda there in front of you.
we're on record.
Yes,
Tyler fixed it.
I did.
Okay,
With his help.
so we'll call this finance work session to order on December 18th. Stand up, join me in the pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Roll call,
I'm here.
please.
Tom,
Here.
David,
He is excused. I'm sorry, he's excused.
Rebecca.
You said
Yep.
she called.
Tammy,
Here.
and Becky.
Here.
I need a motion to excuse David Timmons and Rebecca Burns.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, sir. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Vote.
Lowell,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
Becky.
Yes.
On the agenda, it says super blanket. And that's not a large quilt. She'll explain to you, because I don't think I could completely explain it, but she'll explain to you what super blanket is.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the financial world, UAN operates, which is a system that I use for governmental invoices. You run with super blankets and blankets. Now, people that are on finance, you'll understand what those mean. Super blanket is a more of a ranged PO that can basically be used for reoccurring billings like utilities, which includes electricity, gas, our testing for MassSci, all of our reoccurring, like our medical insurance and things like that.
Electric bills.
For all those utilities, I do feel that we are in a good position as far as being able to utilize those, because those were not utilized in the past. And with speaking with the state auditors, it's going to make my life a lot better, and the finance committees a lot better, because then you won't have to come in because they've expired. So super blankets will cover for a whole year of extended time. And of course, I've received confirmation or recommendation from the auditors that we can go ahead and do that. So what I'm bringing and asking is if we can allow Courtney at the beginning of the year to create super blankets. Now, I did have a small conversation during one of our signings with our finance department or committee, and we talked about creating one of those, and they were okay with that.
Because right now you're only doing like a 3-month
Correct.
blanket, so it'd be a lot better to make it
Yes.
as a super.
Correct. Yeah, because it extends it over a period of time, so we're not having the finance committee coming in signing these POs every so often, because what's happening is, as the bills come in, and that leads me into my next, section is my blanket certificates. Because we've allowed them to have such a small amount that we've placed on them, they also recommended that we extend that blanket. On those blankets are actually for what I would use them for supplies like at RAPS or Napa, which means that we still have a control base around it, because I still feel that we need to have that. But implementing and raising that bar or threshold of 150 to 3,000. So again, those would be on a 3-month basis, which is finance has. Now, we did pass legislation for the blankets, but the state auditors wanted to put some sort of threshold on it, so that it doesn't allow us to overspend, and it doesn't allow those departments to say, okay, well, we've got that amount of money. Because all you're doing when you guys just approved the budget a couple of minutes ago, you've appropriated the entire budget. I'm just coming to you to ask you if I can go ahead and create these blankets, and allowing us to say, okay, the budget's already been approved at that amount of money for the entire year. This just puts in a stricter control over it to say, okay, that department can't raise that amount of money. They can't go in there and spend, say $3,000 in one pop. I mean, that's going to be something that finance is going to have to look at before we even purchase that. So this allows that control to still be there. These super blankets are things that we can't stop. I mean, we have to have electricity. We have to have, gasoline, things like that. So we're not restricting to the vendor. We're just restricting that we still have that control to make sure that we maintain that amount. So my recommendation, and again, I know I spoke with finance. I know Tammy, unfortunately, is the only one here, is to allow us to create super blankets and to allow us to put a threshold of $3,000 on the actual regular blanket certificates.
Is this going to be a resolution drawn up? Or?
Yeah, so what I'll do is, before I leave today, a resolution will be created by Pitt Stick, and then for your guys' passage as an emergency for tomorrow.
Now, are you going to use any for the rest of the 2018 or not?
Yeah, so I'll do my last bill, my last processing of the checks will be Friday, but those are all on blanket certificates because they're all the electricity and recurring. But as of Friday, I won't be sending any more checks out until I close the year. So that'll be a very busy time for me next week. And the start of this week, so.
Now, how long would the blanket last for you? I think you said the super blanket was for 1 year?
Yes, blankets are 3 months.
3 months?
Yes,
How many
or
years?
until you reach the threshold.
3?
3 months,
Okay.
yes,
I was gonna ask, I wasn't sure.
yeah. But that allows the finance committee to come back and wrap around, because again, the super blankets are good for those reoccurring ones that we don't have control over. Now, we do have control over spending what we spend at Napa or, RAPS. That allows the control to still be within finance, to still be with, the financial officer, to say, okay, because if you're spending $3,000 in a month, that's questionable. That allows you guys as a finance committee as well as a council to, ask those questions. So I still like to have that control built.
And I would like to say that Courtney's good about, even though there's a blanket there, and we've already approved the 3-month blanket, finance sees what's getting paid anyway, in that blanket anyhow. She's good about making sure that it's seen. We just don't say, oh, okay,
That's right.
that blanket's covered.
Yeah.
Finance
And if
does see that, and
And-
Courtney
and,
makes sure of
She
it.
can probably attest to that too, is I like to keep everything in email form, just so that we have proof that we don't have somebody, oh, I thought she said this, or I think she said this. We have validation that that's true. Now, if there are big purchases, obviously that goes through finance and says, hey, listen, something just broke down. We're going to have to make sure that we purchase this. It was an unexpected, item.
That's like this drain sewer they're putting in right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
You're in
Yeah, but-
reference to the same thing.
Yeah, well, and at finance is at a lower scale.
Yeah.
To say, hey, we need to go purchase tires. Which in my opinion I feel is a big expense, but other people may say, oh, you got a blanket for that. I still like to say, okay, did we shop around? Did we get the best price for that? I still like to get that sort
Right.
of approval. So the blankets are at a smaller scale, but I think it still should show true and still should show council, not only finance committee, but council, to say, okay, you're coming to me after you spent $3,000. What are you buying for $3,000? That still, I feel, needs to be some sort of control around us. So that would be my recommendation as far as the super blankets and the PO.
So,
Do you, so
pardon?
you're gonna have Mark draw up a resolution?
With your guys' recommendation.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that's
when will we vote on that?
That'll be tomorrow's
Tomorrow.
9 o'clock
Okay.
meeting.
Oh, 9. Okay.
Yes,
that's why we're having a work session today, to see if we're all in agreement and we recommend it.
yes.
Then she'll call Mark, and then we'll pass on emergency measure tomorrow. So we'll get it done before the 31st.
So, do you want this as a motion?
I would prefer to have it as a motion, just so that we're all on the same page, that everybody, at this point, because we are getting close to this, and if it doesn't get passed on an emergency, both of these items, and that we maybe don't ask the right questions, that we can have the opportunity to ask those, because with an emergency, it has to go through those 3 readings. So I know with everybody's time crunch, this is kind of a bad time to do this, but it's been kind of brought, something I feel is
Bombarded.
important. Yeah.
Honest.
So-
Yep.
If we recommend this, then tomorrow we put the resolution on the readings.
Yes, you'll suspend rules.
Yeah.
You'll do 1, 2, and 3, and then you'll place for an adoption.
Mm-hmm.
I myself think it's a great idea. I would recommend
Yeah.
going with the super blankets.
Okay, so would you be comfortable making that
I
motion?
make that motion.
Second,
I'll second.
very good. Does everybody understand it now? I know I think I do, and then she says something else about it, and I get confused,
Well,
so.
super blanket now is just for your recurring bills, electric bills, utilities, things like that.
Yes.
And then your other one is just a smaller version that says, okay, if we have a breakdown, we can run over here and we got up to $3,000 we can spend,
Correct.
and we can spend X amount of dollars,
Yes.
but we still account for every single penny of it.
Correct. And that's what your finance committee will do, and that's what they do with me before each meeting, is they'll come in and say, okay, what did you buy? And and council has that opportunity too, to say, okay, what were the purchases? Were they repairs for the sewer? Were they, did something need to happen on the street? So with my committee, if there is a big purchase, now if it's just going next door to get a screw and stuff like that, that's covered under that blanket. Anything that's like where they say they need to have asphalt carried in, that's an expense that we're gonna say, hey, there was a water main break that happened, we're gonna need 50 tons of asphalt. Committee, finance gets alerted first, and then I would put that through email, or I, would call a meeting, or, advise them that, this needs to be spent. But other ways, I feel that I do a good job in alerting you guys on those types of expenses. Now, but what it also gives is a clear picture to the people that are not on finance, in my opinion, the people that are not, and you as council members that are not on that committee, it gives you the opportunity to say, okay, well, I already know $3,000 is a threshold, so if I'm coming to council the 3rd day of January, and I said, hey, we've already spent our $3,000, that's going to allow you guys as council to have a control to say, okay, what are we spending for $3,000? Because you guys will see it on your payment receipt. You'll see it on your payment report. So it not only gives finance the first authority to sign off on it, but it'll give you guys as council members to say, okay, wait a minute, I know we're $3,000, why are we spending it in 3 days? So I feel that it does build some sort of a control for you guys as council to understand what's been spent and how it was spent. That's all mine. So,
Okay, roll call.
Yes.
okay, Tom,
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
and Becky.
Yes.
Okay, so that was just a motion to make the recommendation,
To make,
okay?
um,
It's just a motion to make a recommendation for me to pull legislation.
okay, that's what he said.
Yes.
He's making a recommendation.
Over the years, this has changed because we used to be able to do this without action of council.
Yeah, unfortunately, the state auditors want, I'm assuming because of the physical emergency,
I don't know. It might have changed.
yeah, they wanted to have an actual resolution to go back to. Because I know when Cindy was here, she had processed a resolution on blankets or whatnot, but there was no thresholds and things like that. So they would like to see that as what we consider best practices.
Okay, they recommended it. You're
Yeah.
gonna call Pitt Stick, have draw a resolution up
Just for that one.
for
So,
for tomorrow.
yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just whenever you're ready for the next topic.
I'm ready.
Okay, so the next topic. As you guys had passed, and I know it's been a long time ago, this would have been resolution number 2018-05. Okay, this was at the beginning of this year. We passed a resolution enunciating changes to the employee personal manual and declaring an emergency. Now, I know with all the stuff that we've had to deal with this year, physical emergency stuff, budgeting stuff, passing things on resolutions, emergencies, things that we had to get into order, to make it successful, to make the village more, more
Operable.
Compliant.
yes, to apply some
Yep.
of these changes. Now, with that said, at the time, this resolution 2018-05, there were some controls that I think I felt and that the mayor felt, and I think some of council, had felt in regards to the employees, and how the employee manual was something that was written years ago, and maybe we've always said that we need to sit down and look at those changes. Because I do feel that there are probably some changes that need to be updated. Now, that's looking through 130 pages of an employee manual that, I know we've talked about in prior meetings, that I do feel that there are some changes that I think you guys wanted to see, as well as what, employees, what it would be fair to the employees. Now, with that said, on this resolution, we did enunciate some changes, and one of the matters, and again, I do feel that we really need to revisit the employee manual and get that back to code, because there's a lot of changes that I think, it was still with the previous administration, signed with that administrator and stuff, and there's village administrator stuff in there that, since we don't have that position, what do we do with it? What kind of changes? But this is actually set to expire, and this is kind of the one that I was looking into as the year kind of winds down. And in this resolution, there is a category that states that no sick or vacation time can be carried over the next calendar year. Okay, now next calendar year means that when we start the next year, January 1st of 19, that there is no sick or vacation time to be carried over. Okay, now we had to implement this section because, there's been a lot of time that you could carry over, but there wasn't like a threshold. There wasn't
There was a lot of abuse on that.
yeah.
Lot.
Because some people were using, in the past, when they would be on vacation, okay, they were allowed to use their sick time.
Yeah.
And per the Ohio rule, and per the labor law, it says, and per this policy, it states that you cannot use and combine your vacation and sick time. That if you are sick, you should be using your sick time. If you're on vacation, you should be using your vacation time. So, with this said, also there was, in the state, and because we're in a governmental, entity, this kind of is a little bit different than the private sector.
Right.
Because he came from a private sector, I
Right.
came from a private sector, whereas your budget was on an annual budget. We didn't have OPERS, we didn't have SERS and things like that for retirement.
And that
But
this is partly you and I come from a private sector.
Yeah.
I had no idea, we accumulated vacation time
Mm-hmm.
and sick time and stuff like that, and there
you
was a
didn't use it,
method
well-
of it. At the end of the year, you usually had it or you got paid for it and stuff.
Use it or lose it.
That's
But
right.
I
And did the
didn't,
same
I
thing,
didn't
right?
know
Yes.
that they'll end up with zero.
So if they get sick
On-
on January 2nd,
Yeah.
then they don't have any sick time or vacation time. This is what this policy says.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that if they decide to get sick, now on the other spectrum of that, I've reached out to other entities, governmental, likeness entities like us, like South Charleston, Leesburg, and things like that. With the OPERS, that causes another conflict as well, is that if you pay into OPERS, which all of our employees do, if you pay into OPERS, if they decide, say, January 20th, they decide to take another job at South Charleston, okay? They have the opportunity to take and carry over their sick time because it is accrued. They earned it.
Right.
Now, what I do have, and what I feel the protection of the village, and from the village's standpoint, is that it's okay, like you could carry over your time because they accrued it and they earned it, okay? But the problem that I have is that, say for instance, they decide to retire, or they decide that, something happens and they have all this time to use. So what's going to happen is that you're without an employee. It's still on that payroll section of it, but you don't have a cap on it. Okay? Now, legal law shows that the cap for payout, and I know in here, and that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys, is that these are two entities, one from South Charleston and one from Leesburg. Okay? They all have caps on their sick time, which means that if they decide to retire, then we only pay them out for a cap, because you can have somebody accruing, say, and I know this is bogus, but 1,000 hours of sick time. How much is that going to be a penalty against the village? But it's not a penalty. They've earned it. They've given their time. They've given their dedication. They've given their work. But is that a smart, when we talk about from the heart of, a smart thing, as the village, that could be a hefty chunk. Now, I do know, speaking to state people, I've spoken to the people that work for ODOT, and they said that back in the day, they did that. They paid you out. There are people right now that have been kind of grandfathered into that back in the day, and they're getting paid, $80,000 in addition to their retirement. So the state also has changed that section of their payout, which then brought to me to think, okay, this is the end of the year. I don't want to have our employees say, okay, well, if I'm going to lose it, we're talking a week and a half to the end of the year. If I'm going to lose it, then I'm going to take my time. I mean, and I don't want that to happen either, because then, here we are, we've got a village to operate. So I get both sides of it because it is earned. But my only issue would be is that they can carry and this would be, from what I can read in these, and I'll give you an example so I can read it to you. Okay, their sick time they receive, this is South Charleston. The sick time they receive is 12 hours a month. They can carry over a cap of 600 hours, and they still have over 600 hours at the end of the year that they can cash out. They also have, as far as like vacation and stuff, but I think the only thing that we need to look at right now, because I do feel that we need to do an overhaul of the entire employee handbook. The only concern that I have right now, just based upon time and where we're at right now at the end of the year, is to only talk about the carryover time. I will hold on to these and so that we can discuss it as a whole, as far as like what the cap should be, you know, how many years of service you've been here, which is based upon how many vacation days you get. You know, that's, I think, for a story for another time, because I do feel that there's a lot of things that we could probably be consistent with other, you know, municipalities. So they're saying here that they do have a cap, that sort of thing.
But right now, what, and I know you don't want to get into it too much, but what are we paying them in accruing? What are they accruing in vacation and sick time? Is it based on longevity, or is it based?
It's based on their years of time.
Okay.
So I got the employee manual of what we currently have right now. Starting today, the employee should accrue vacation time in the amount of 0.0196 hours. So it's 0.0196 hours of vacation time. And then after their second anniversary, they get this amount. After their other after 5 years, they get this amount. So ADP controls our accrued time. All I do is go in there and put the rate in. Okay. So you got, you know, you accrue more sick time than you do vacation time. That's just how that, based upon our policy here, you get a lot more sick time than you do vacation time, because your vacation time is accrued of, after 1 year of service, you get 2 weeks. Okay, so that's paid vacation leave. So I know, looking at these policies here from, you know, South Charleston, they are different from ours. You know, they put a cap on theirs. Now, the state does put a 240-hour cap on it, say that somebody retires. You know, because we can't just think of what's going to happen today. But if somebody retires, you think to yourself, okay, you know, they've been here for, say, you know, 100 years. You know, there's a cap that they can be at that the village pays them out for. And that's really what I think the state is going into that direction, because after talking to a lot of people that work for the state, they've placed a cap on it now, because they know that, you know, there's people that have longevity, and, you know, a lot of those entities are saying, you know, we appreciate that, but there comes a point where, you know, it does become very costly. Now, we can get to that again at another time, because I do feel that, you know, nobody at this point is, you know, in time for retirement. The only concern that I would have is if somebody decided to leave, you know, what's their accrued time? You know, like how much time do they have that the village would be responsible for the payout?
So
Okay.
each of our employees are accruing their sick time and vacation time at different rates.
Yes,
And
depending upon their years of service, yes.
okay. And you just today want to
Today,
decide,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
just decide how much they're allowed to max out at and
Well,
carry over.
not necessarily.
Are you wanting them to carry it all over, and then there'll be a max payout at the end or
Okay,
something?
so what I'm recommending is that there is a motion or legislation for passage for the carryover of sick and vacation time for 2019.
Oh, okay.
Which means that at December 31st, okay, if we're at midnight at December 31st, January 1st comes along, okay, now say it's not a holiday, say January 2nd, okay, say that, and say I'm a worker, I'm a village worker out on the street, I'm sick, I ate too much over New Year's, okay, I'm calling in sick. They do not get sick time, because their first check wasn't accrued yet. Their hours worked were not worked. That's the only way they're getting vacation and sick time, is if the hours that they've accrued and that they've worked. So even if they call in January the 4th, this policy states here, and you know it's
Zero.
verbatim,
How many,
that no sick or vacation time can be carried over to the next calendar year. That's how it was written.
Zero.
0.
well, roughly, how long would they have to work before they had like 2 or 3 days sick time?
They're accrued at, like, I don't know, 4.6, I want to say. So they
About a
would-
month.
Yeah.
A month.
About a
4 hours a month,
That's determined by the state.
so
That's
that's
like 4.6 hours or something like that.
6 days.
I was against this
6 days a
when it
year.
passed,
Yeah.
but the way the state's doing things anymore,
Yeah.
They're all
think I
they're all
voted
doing
for
it.
it.
Columbus City Police Department's going through it right now with insurance.
Yes.
right?
They're all, you know, everybody used to give away the whatever, but they're all, it changed years ago with the state of Ohio. Insurance, companies used to pay insurance. It's almost unheard of unless you work in the tech industry anymore.
Yep.
Or you have a position in a corporation. So they're all going through this.
So January will be just
I-
like
I didn't, I didn't realize under this ordinance or resolution, because I could take my vacation, but come January 1st, if I'd been there 20 years, I had 20 years vacation that very day I went back. Where in this, when the way they accumulate theirs, they wouldn't.
Yeah, and see, like.
And I didn't realize that.
In a private, sector, what happens too is that they've allotted you for, and that's what happens, and that's where I came from. In a private sector, they say, okay, we've allotted Courtney, she has been here for 20 years. You automatically, for your 20-year anniversary, you automatically get 4 weeks of vacation time. You get, I don't know, they put in a bucket. And they say, this is your personal time, you use it however. Some entities say, okay, here's personal time, you use it for sick or vacation time. But in this sector, we can't stop the accruing. Because see, what the problem is that say on, like I said, January 20th, they decide they want to go to South Charleston. If he goes to South Charleston, and say I go to South Charleston, and I say, okay, well, I've been there for 5 years, I didn't use my sick time. And that's happened to employees that have left here. Their HR department has called out and said, hey, how much sick time have they had? And I have to say that because legally I have to tell them that. And we can't stop that accruing because that's not the way OPERS works. OPERS works based upon hours worked. So you can't, you get to actually grandfather your time over to another sector if it's another government entity.
Where in the private sector,
Yes, you
it
don't.
just works in reverse.
That's right. So if
So,
I got sick in a private sector on January the 2nd, then on January 2nd, I've already know what my time is that I'm getting for that year because it's already been voiced to me of how many years of service I had. But again, I do believe that all of this and all these examples, I do feel that we really need to look at that employee manual because there's a lot of inconsistencies I've seen compared to what their time is. Because they passed legislation, I mean, in Leesburg, for instance, like in retirement, they passed one back in 2001 that says they only get a leave and they retire at 240 hours. So they've already put a cap on it, whereas here they get 600 hours. So, I mean, that's going to be something you guys will have to talk about, but in this instance here, because of the time, they're not going to have time to carry over come January.
right. You
So
and I we'll review the handbook. We'll bring any suggestions we have to council.
So until I don't want to be stuck in that where, if today or if tomorrow they say, hey, I want to use my vacation time, and they have the hours and vacation time to use, unfortunately, I don't want to be put in that position where people are taking off that time or using sick time because the state of Ohio, if a person calls in and says they're sick, I can't question why they're sick. And we don't have a policy that says that they have to tell me, nor do we have long-term or short-term disability here either. So it's not like they can use long-term or short-term disability.
Who brought this up in the first place?
Yeah.
What's that?
Seems like,
Adoption of this policy. Where'd that come from?
This one was what you guys approved,
I know,
2018-05.
but who brought it to our attention?
I think, I'll be honest with you, and Billy, I can speak for Billy too, is that there was a lot of abuse of sick time and vacation time that was used.
That
And
may
there
be,
had to
but
be,
who developed this policy?
well, I think
This
I
one
did.
she has?
I know.
Yeah, I think I contributed it to.
I did. I contributed to it,
The
but
point system, because people were allowed to come to work and then leave without any restriction or any discipline behind that.
Well, I'm surprised that Mark allowed this to go through.
Well, here's the thing. So you can set any sort of policy that you want, right?
Right.
So any kind of legislation you can set. And that was the abuse that we were having. And I won't name, I think we all know what had transpired at that time.
I agree with
Is
you.
maybe the protection of the village.
I understand what you're saying. But courthouse, I know, doesn't have such a policy.
No.
And I don't know why he wouldn't have recommended that we not do it.
Yeah, I don't know that. But I
I
do
don't know
know
either.
that this was a once abused policy. And then I think it really had to take action quickly for that to be taken care of. Because that, we can go into, I think we all know what.
When did we adopt this?
This was 2018-05, and it was adopted on January the
A year ago, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, January 28th.
yeah.
And
Well, I
well, it was
know we
published January
adopted it.
28th and February 4th.
I didn't know how long.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you want today?
Okay, so what I'm asking, what my recommendation would be, or what I'm asking council, is that a recommendation be that allowing them to carry over their sick and vacation time. Because per policy, there is a cap out. So if somebody decided they want to retire January 4th, which none of our employees are able to, there is still a cap out. So that still does protect the village.
So do you want a motion to rescind that policy?
Well, we don't want to rescind all of it. We only want to rescind that section where it says carry over sick and vacation time.
That's the part.
Yes. Because also in this policy, just to kind of give you guys an FYI, and I'm sure you guys have a copy of that, but as far as like overtime, that was still an issue, you know, because that does save the village money when people do comp their time versus getting paid out for that, because they get, what, 2.5% or whatever it is. A point system, which means that if somebody abuses and comes to work and then says, hey, I don't want to work today, that it still, you know, holds a policy to them to say, you know what, like then you get, there's a point system after that. Holiday pay, that was another big thing, is that, say for instance, you know, Christmas falls on Tuesday this year. Christmas Eve is not a observed holiday here at the village, okay? So say that they call in sick, and then they call in sick, you know, the day after, or one day apiece, then they don't get paid for their holiday pay. Also, let's see, employees cannot use sick and vacation time together. That was an exhausted practice back in the day. You know, a badge machine. The guys are required to badge in and out.
Time clock.
To make sure, I always say badge time, but they badge and they have a time clock in and out to say, okay, I'm not taking a 2-hour lunch. I can see, as the financial officer can see, okay, you didn't take a 2-hour lunch. You took a half an hour lunch because that's what's required of you. So there are things in here that are practiced right now and work very well as far as the discipline around the employees. This part here, though, is you know, a policy that I think was an abuse at one time, but I think has been retracted. And now that we do have these other rules in place, it really does give an opportunity because, again, what do you do when they get sick, say January 4th?
Okay, I have some questions though.
Yes.
Klein left.
Mm-hmm.
Did he go to another public?
Yes, he did.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we need to check to make sure that he has the correct carryover.
He does, because they reached out to me. They reached out to me, and what happens, and I've had to do this with other employees, they reached out to me and said, okay, how much sick time and vacation time do they have? Because they moved to another OPERS. And that only holds true if they move to a entity or municipality that has OPERS as well. Now, if he moved, say I moved from OPERS currently, and I have 20 years in here, I can't go to Mad Hatter or Sunoco or Kaheen and say, okay, I want to carry my time over, because they don't contribute in OPERS, and this only holds true. But see, what you have here too with some employees, they're more than likely want to go to another municipality because look at all the time that you've accrued, and plus that's what they're experienced in. So,
Okay.
So more than likely they're going to do that.
Has Mark prepared for you a motion for us to make today?
Well, you guys are going to make the recommendation, and then I sent you guys an email out, is that after this meeting I will be in touch with Mark, and then he's going to send me the legislation for you guys to vote on at 9. But the legislation will only be to allow me to create super blankets and the threshold for the 3,000 for the regular blanket, and then allow us to, I don't want to say rescind, or maybe amend 2018-05, this section of carryover for sick and vacation time.
Yeah, see
it's
what
not
he-
going to amend anything else.
See what he recommends.
But I do feel strongly that we all need to sit down and look at that employee handbook. I know I've said this 100 times today and in the past. I do think that we really need to look at that.
And I've told you 100 times, we'll sit down and look at it together.
I know, I'm just saying
And-
there's others.
So Mark, go ahead.
We'll bring our recommendations to council, and that's the way the meeting don't last for days or weeks. It'll
You already said it, I didn't hear it. What is the maximum sick time that you can do from
Okay, so there's not an accrue. The only time that there's a threshold is if they ever leave and they ever retire.
I'm talking about during the year.
I can tell you.
I'm sorry.
You're talking
I
about
can tell
carrying
you.
over a year?
No, well, when an employee's
accrue-
working from January to December, okay?
15.
How much sick time do they get? Can they,
15.
Yeah, I mean, it's based upon their rate. I mean, to do the
15.
math.
it's 15?
It's 1.25 per month
Yeah.
times 12.
Whoa,
It's
whoa,
about
whoa,
15,
whoa.
isn't
Huh? No.
Yeah, he's talking.
Are we talking about
when you
sick
get
time?
accrued, Each pay,
Yeah.
each hour's worked.
Even though you're working in January and you get sick and you still accrue your sick time,
Even
one
though
and a
you're
quarter per month.
Correct. Because it
So-
depends on hours worked, and it depends on what you've accrued, what your rate is. So if
15.
you're asking me what that is, it depends on how many years of service you have. Because after years of service, you do have a different rate on that.
Your sick
Not
time
really.
In
increases?
this employee handbook, it does say that.
Well, that
Your
shouldn't
sick
be,
time
because
increases with seniority?
Vacation time.
15.
Well, yeah, but Tom's talking about sick time.
15.
Yeah, I'm talking about sick time
Oh, okay.
because what you're trying to do, is my understanding, okay, is that if an employee gets sick January the 1st and they need to call off, they can't. So you're wanting to give them a little bit of a cushion until they actually start getting their time coming in, their sick time coming in, correct?
No.
No, I'm making it where that they can carry their time over. All
From
of their
this
time.
year to
So say,
next
for
year.
instance, me. Say
In
come
3
December
weeks.
31st. December 31st, I have 100 hours of sick time and 50 hours of vacation time. On January 1st, all of that goes away. So I'm an employee coming in January 2nd and I'm sick, or January 4th, let's pick a day. January 4th and I'm sick, and I need to call in now because I'm throwing up. So I call in to Billy and I say, Billy, hey, I'm sick. You know, I can't come in. They have no time because time's only accrued when you have
Hold it.
hours worked.
Hold it. If you're a new employee and you come to work, the state of Ohio says you have 5 days.
That's not how this policy is.
No, and regardless of that policy, the state of Ohio supersedes that. So if I come to work for you today,
I know that.
I know.
I don't have. I can honestly say I don't know how true that is.
I know how true
Okay.
it is because I've been affiliated with it all my life. So whenever you came to school and you start school in September as a new employee of Westfall Madison Plains, you automatically have 5 days.
Okay,
That's the way it
I can't
works.
speak how honest that is. I honestly don't know that.
Okay.
You don't
Well,
get
my
it anymore.
concern, the reason why I was asking, my concern is, I'll go with the 100 hours that you was talking about. Okay, I've got 100 hours. I don't use 100 hours. Okay, next year I don't use 100 hours. Now I've got 200 hours. And next year I don't have 100 hours. I got 300 hours.
Yes.
Okay, and then one day I'm going to wake up and say, man, I got 400 hours of sick time. And you know
Right.
what?
Yep.
I'm just going to sit back and I'm just going to.
can.
Well, sick time, no, because that's not how the policy is written. Policy is written that after 3 consecutive days that you have called off sick time, you're required to give a doctor's notice. Now, if that employee, say I want to do that, say, okay, you know what, I have 500 hours, I want to take the rest of the year off. You have the opportunity to do that because you have accrued time. But the policy states in here, and I've already looked that up, is that after 3 days of consecutive call-off because you are sick and you're using sick time, then Billy has the opportunity to say, no, give me your doctor's note. What is wrong?
Yeah, we need to have something in there to protect
Yeah.
the village.
That already happened.
And the doctor has to tell me, that you
my
are
concern
sick.
is, yeah, we have that 300 hours over the end. Somebody calls in and says, well, I'll just take 300 hours off.
Right.
And I'll see
And
you
right here,
guys.
it says, right here, multiple absences on a single day, which is 3 consecutive days of using sick time in a department or a village, department or division, well, here it says the village administrator at the time shall and will have to obtain a copy of a doctor's notice. That's
Okay.
already written in here.
I think the whole thing needs to be
I know.
revised.
I know. We've
And-
talked about that.
What I'm also telling you is, like he's saying, I might have 300 hours, you don't accrue anymore. You have a limit.
With OPERS, you do not. You have a limit
Yes.
when you
We
retire.
need to check that out because the,
Well, I mean, we're going into another thing. I'm just asking because of time.
I know.
About the time. But that's why I said I feel very strongly that these policies need to be looked at.
I agree with you.
Because, I mean, at this time, I'm more concerned of what's going to happen when people leave.
Well, I'm concerned too, and
I
I
know we're
was
gonna
at the
look at
time
it.
we adopted it. So-
Especially if we get 15 days a year sick time.
Okay,
Right.
so,
Gee, many. What?
so basically though, what we
That's not
did
bad.
in January, was unfair to the employees. It was
Yes.
just kind of, probably the scenario that we were going through led us astray. So we need to just have a recommendation here, but they should be able to accrue and carry over their sick time.
And
because-
vacation time.
They should be able, their vacation time and their sick time, they should be able to use that when they want to use that. And if we, down the road, set caps on it, then we do. But for now, I'll give you a recommendation to, to amend that part of the legislation to allow them to accrue sick time and vacation time and
Yeah.
carry it over.
Mark will put the
Yes.
proper wording in there. Do I have a second? I had a
I wanna hear it,
recommendation.
What's she said?
She,
I gave a recommendation. In my opinion, this was a mistake when we did it. I'll give a recommendation that we should let them carry over their sick time and their vacation time. Because what we don't want to happen, like Courtney was saying, is we don't want let's say all three guys out there said, well, we have time and it's going to all go away January the 1st. So we're all three going to take off the last 2 weeks of the year. And then the village would be bad. So I think we should let them carry it over, and then we'll need to look at the handbook down the road and set caps on what we do. But for
Very good.
now, they should be able to carry that over.
I can second that.
thank you very much.
And then we're asking Mark to prepare legislation that is legal.
Correct.
Yeah.
He should never have let us pass this one in the first place. I don't criticize Mark, but I will on this.
I know a motion's already been made, but does that have to be done now? Can that not be? I understand what you're trying to do, and if we have an employee come January that's sick and coughing, everybody's here has passed that flu around at least once, okay? And if one of the employees gets sick, I don't think the mayor's going to look at that guy and say, "Well, you know what? No, you don't have any sick time." I don't think you would.
Well,
do that.
I think you you can't discriminate. I think if a policy is a policy, you should follow that.
Well, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
So how
But
you
what
pay-
I was thinking though, would it not be better to sit down and do this and just go completely over this thing and just
We don't have
nail it?
time unless you want to come in.
No, I'm
here.
talking about the first of the year.
Yeah.
You know, and just
Yes.
nail it down and just be done.
Okay,
and,
but as we need to pay attention on this legislation, and I'll read it again.
Also,
Calendar
I'm sorry.
year. Calendar year means at the end of this year.
Yes.
Government is done on a calendar year. And per this legislation, no sick or vacation time can be carried over to the next calendar year.
That's right.
Which means
That's wrong.
that if this doesn't get passed before December the 31st,
They'll
okay,
lose all their time.
you're going to lose all their time. Plus, if this doesn't get passed, and not to say that our employees are like that, because believe me,
Right,
they're very
right.
loyal, dedicated, and whatnot. But it wouldn't be fair to say that, okay, say that Courtney wants to go get a job as being a water operator at South Charleston. You know, what do you do with your accrued time? Because the HR person's going to come to me and say, hey, you know, you stopped their accruing on their pay. You need to add an additional amount on there because we can't legally stop their accruing because they pay into OPERS, and that's a state retirement. So I guess what I'm saying is definitely understand and definitely kept saying is that this needs to be overhauled. But this is going to eliminate this because if this doesn't get passed, not to say our employees are going to do that because I don't think they're going to do that, but I don't feel like what Becky said is that it would be fair because they can come in here and say, hey, I'm just going to take off the rest of the year.
That's right.
Now, we do have a policy built around that to say, okay, you know, if one person's off, and that's what I kind of try to like to do, is that if one person's off, I still need some heads in here in the village to maintain things. Now, I do feel that there was an abuse back in the day or at this time that this was being passed. We can all question that and we can all say that, you know, it is unfair or if it's not fair, if it is fair. But at this point, we don't have the time to overhaul this entire thing before the 31st.
No, we don't. You and
Okay,
I,
then
we'll
we're
take
at-
Bring
care
it
of
in
that.
line with the open
Correct.
retirement, and
Yes.
that's all you're gonna do, just bring it in
Yes.
line with that.
Yes.
And then we can talk about what's your cap. What do you think that the minimum is
Right.
going to be? Because we do need to protect the village as far as payout. too. Is that- Now, again, we don't want anybody to retire, but what if somebody gets in here and they are close to retirement? Then you got to talk about caps.
Okay, so we have a recommendation, we have a second,
Well, I have another question.
okay?
Jason came in 0.
Yes.
Technically, regardless of what policy we have, he has 5 days of sick time right now. How long's he been here?
Since October the 14th.
Couple months.
All right, October, November, and December, plus 1.25 days, plus 5. And whenever he accrues 5, then it goes on.
Okay, but I'm going to say honestly, I don't know if that's true, and I'm not. Gonna
I know
say
it's
that.
true because I've worked with this some 34 years.
Okay,
So anyway, I
All
vote
right.
yes.
Okay, so you voted. You seconded.
roll,
that.
call. Yeah,
Roll call is
roll
yes?
call.
Yes?
Okay, Tom,
I second
Yes.
it.
Tammy,
Yes.
and Becky.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, got that. You'll contact Mark on both those
Yes,
issues.
and then I also, just
Then-
to reiterate, I did send an email to all of you guys. The minute that I get this, he has already been notified that we were going to have this meeting, so he knows what the legislation was about, but he just needs to put it in the words.
Okay,
So I will
Another
have this
meeting
to you in the
tomorrow.
morning.
so our next meeting is tomorrow.
I'll send it out to you early. I get in here early.
But
so
we have
I'll
a
be-
meeting at 9 a.m., right?
Yes, and a meeting at 9.
9.
At 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Oh, is it 9?
Pass it.
Yeah.
9.
I thought it was 10. 9 o'clock? 9 o'clock tomorrow morning?
9 o'clock.
9.
9 o'clock.
Be here, be square. I don't know.
And this is, that's the wording I wanna use on this, is just to have it amended, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not going to rescind it. We're just amending this section of sick and vacation pay
Yes.
overtime.
Well, technically, we're removing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
amend it he'll
Technically.
put the name on it.
Now, this is
Technically.
a spatial council
Correct.
meeting.
It's going to be passed as an emergency, so you will be suspending rules 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
and then adoption.
On both of them.
Okay, but it is a council meeting.
Yes.
Yes. 9 o'clock.
Okay.
All right. Everybody good? We're adjourned.
All right. Thank you, guys.
No, thank you.
And it's on record, so if you guys have any questions
Don't have
at
anything.
night or tonight and say something came up and we didn't discuss it or whatever, you can call me, email me, or just refer back to the video, okay?
Oh, boy.